Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the webinar will be started shortly, but before we begin, let me inform you a couple of housekeeping notes of this webinar. The first one, today's webinar is scheduled to last for 2 hours, including the question and answer session, and all dial-in participants will be muted to enable the speakers to present without any interruption. And then today's webinar is being recorded. The question, so if you have any question, you can just simply write it down in the Google form that has been shared, the link in the email that has been sent to you yesterday. And please use the username as recorded in the registration link, the full name. And also please confirm your presence during the webinar by completing the link right after you join this webinar. And then the e-certificate will be sent via registered email after fully attending the webinar. So make sure you stay with us until the end of this webinar. Okay, I think we are ready to go now. The honorable speakers, distinguished guests, and also ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm very much delighted to be the moderator for this first international webinar of ASEAN Journal of Community Engagement, Universitas Indonesia. My name is Astari. I'm from Faculty of Mathematics and Natural Sciences, Universitas Indonesia. The first thing first, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you. Welcome to our first international webinar. We are in ASEAN Journal of Community Engagement very surprised because according to the registration list, until last Friday evening, there are more than 1,000 participants submitted for this webinar. So it's such an honor for us. And we are sorry because due to the participant limitation of this platform, we cannot accept all the participants. But don't worry, you may join the live streaming via YouTube. And if you have questions, you just simply ask them via Google form at any time during this webinar. Okay, then let me introduce you to the agenda of this webinar. So today's webinar, basically we will listen the important issues related to COVID-19. As we all know that almost all countries in the world have been suffered from the disease caused by the new coronavirus. And this disease is not only affecting the health issue, but also for various sectors, including economy, education, environment, social, and so on. And we are very glad because today we are very pleased to have 6 distinguished speakers who are expert in their field.
Good afternoon and good evening wherever you are. So thank you so much for attending the webinar. I'm going to talk about our community engagements that was done since 2017. It was continued until 2018 and 19, and also due to the COVID-19, we continue the project as well in 2020. So this is the title of our presentations, and it's talking about the empowering of women as well as member of the village consultative body. In Indonesia, it's called as Badan Permusyawaratan Desa, as well as on the for the aim or the purpose in enhancing the transparency and accountability both of the village funds allocations as well as on the direct cash assistance part of the village funds. So we conduct the projects in 3 different locations. So it's 3 different regional locations. So first we did it close to Jakarta in Java Island. It's called as the Desa Jongjing in Tisoka, Kabupaten Tangerang. And the second one, we did it in Desa Sambirejo in Kecamatan Ngawen, Kabupaten Gunung Kidul. And the third one, we did the project in Desa Pule, and that is in Wonogiri, also part of Yogyakarta province. So there are 3 different regions that we did. We continue to the next slide. We look at the corruptions, the poverty rate that was recorded from the history since 1970s. So For those who are going to have this paper, so inshallah, this paper is going to be published in the Asian Journal of Community Engagements, hopefully by July. So details of the paper will be presented there. Looking at the poverty rate since 1970s, this number comes from a quite high number. So, and then went down. So from this 60%, and then went down. And the first time in the history, in March 2018, that apparently this went down to a single digit. And now, with the figure, it went down in September 18 to 966, and even went down again in 2019, March 2000, the September 2019, as well as went down again just before the outbreak of the COVID-19, and that's the figure becomes 9.62% as compared to 60% back in 1970s. So it's a huge accomplishment done by the government. They worked really hard to make it a single digit. Unfortunately, then we do have the COVID outbreak. So the COVID outbreak indicates that the number of poverty rate, the percentage of the poverty rate, both in the urban and rural area becomes quite a problem because a lot of people lost their job and they don't have to work. They don't work because of the social distancing policy. So what we are afraid of that this single digit number will become higher. So from the more less pessimistic way, it comes to 10.54%, and that is predicted by end of the year. But even with the more pessimistic predictions, this percentage of 962%, it could go up to 12.4%. And that is something that was predicted by Smeri Research Institute in Jakarta, and that is what something that we are worried about. So our Ministry of Babadan, that's something to do with the planning and development, and they said that without any interventions, without any government interventions, this percentage of poverty rate will go up if we don't do anything. That's the reasons why then the government reduced a lot of package. And one of the package, which comes from the village fund allocations, is called as the direct cash assistance. So this is in Indonesia known as bantuan langsung tunai. That's part of the village fund allocations. This year, it is predicted to be allocated about 72 trillion rupiah, and that is going to be allocated to around 65 villages, 65,000 villages across Indonesia. So you can see it in the number here, the figure here, that this declining rate of poverty rate, but this unfortunately will go up due to the COVID outbreak. So next page, please. So this is what I run using NP412, so a software and running for qualitative data. NP412 Pro or N Plus. Out of all of the news that I conducted, I collected from the local newspaper as well as some overseas newspaper and internet-based information, as well as from my initial interviews with different stakeholders. It is so unfortunate that the terms cases and the terms corruptions become the most discussed issues related to the village fund allocations, alokasi dana desa, as well as on the bantuan langsung tunai direct cash assistance on village funds. So this is something that we need to do. So the amount is huge, 72 trillion rupiah, but at the same time also the cases on corruptions is also quite significant, and that is something that we need to do related to the supervisions on these allocations of the funds. So next, please. So these are just a list of type of corruption, so that it's a bit small, but you will see it in the list of the paper. So that's about the village funds, because we started the project on village fund first, 2017, and then we talk about village funds in 2018, and then 2019 we continue, and from March 2020 we started with the direct cash assistance, and that is presented in the next slide. Next slide, please. So these are the notes, apart from the 12 notes that was introduced and was reported by Indonesian Corruption Watch body. We do also have, we also found this type of uh, corruption cases with regard to the direct cash assistance, and this is related to COVID-19 outbreak. So the first one is that, as you know, that this uh, fund comes from the village fund allocations, where each eligible member of the community will get um, 600,000 rupiah, and it's going to be paid in 3 months, but it's going to be extended another 3 months. So they will get 600,000 multiplied by 6 months, and that is going to be distributed among 65 different, 600 villages across Indonesia. Unfortunately, start from March until today, we found several cases like this. So number one, where some of the village head or member of the village officials, they discounted the amount of the fund. So they tried to take a little bit, and they said it's as a commission. They said it's just for me to buy a cigarette, or they manipulate the data. So then the data supposed to be a long list, and apparently the list was changed to another list, and maybe those who are in the list are neglected or omitted, manipulating the list of recipients or delaying the distributions, as well as holding the distributions or maybe distribute to other recipients. So next slide, please. So these are the motivations of the study. I'm going to jump to the next slide. If you can move to the next slide. I'm going to the end next slides again. Okay, so I'm going to confirm about this one. Apparently, our study is a bit huge. It's really about the grand designs, because we really want to take more information about the phenomena, what happens with these three different um, villages in three different locations and three different districts or kabupaten. So it's not really a specific about gender study. It's not really specific about the role of the community, but we are trying to map all those problems that occur in these three different regions. So the first one is about the role of the communities in supervising these village allocations, as well as on the direct cash assistance or the LTTD. So the first one is the role of the community. The second one is the role of the supervisory body. The third one is the role of female supervisions as part of member of the village consultative body or part of the community in guarding and supervising the direct assistance, as well as the channel for them to report if there are cases, or as well as problems of whether this is a corruption case or it's just a normal case, so something like this. The next slide is that one. I'm going to introduce you about, next slide please. The research questions. We do have 6 research questions. The first one is we are talking about um, the perceptions of the community, what you think about how to guard and to save and to control and to monitor this village funds allocations, including the direct assistance. How can community involvement, that includes the SATCAS, it's the task force set up by the regional government, the head of the village, to accompany them in preparing the report, as well as what are the challenges. Importantly, the next slide, we are using The next slide, please. Importantly, we are using a theory called the accountability theory with the ice cube of the accountability theory. There are three important messages that you want to know, and that is what we want to learn from these three different districts. The first one, we are talking about how they communicate each other between one party, we call it the accountable actor, and the accountable forum. That's us as the constituents, as us as the stakeholders. How do they communicate each other? How do they distribute the information? And secondly, we want to know about, are there any discussions? Are there any like questions and answers? Are there any complaints that can be accepted by the head of the villages? And the third one, importantly, are there any consequences that will be done and conducted by the forum to the actors? So this is what we call it. We are using accountability theory that is presented next. So next slides, please. So these are the objectives. We can skip this and we go to the theory. Next slide. Next slide. So yes, before that. So before this, before this, this one. So um, using Bolton's theory as cited and as developed by Kelly and Dubnik in 2014, I'm talking about the actor. I'm talking about the accountable actor. In this case, is the village head, which has to be accountable to the forum, and the forum is us, the constituents, the residents, the citizens, or the stakeholders. And in here, when they actor inform the forum, and they inform that their information can be in many different ways, like in Desa Jengjin, in Cisoka, in Tangerang, for instance, they have a small banner, maybe like about 25 meters, in front of the Desa Jengjin, for instance. And it's so hard to see it because sometimes this banner might be blown away by heavy winds, and they're not there. It's just the only one that is available. That is the way they inform the constituents about the accountability report about what they have done related to the village funds as well as direct cash assistance. So in Tisapule and this Sambirajo, for instance, they do have a huge banner. It's a very tall banner, and well, it's really hard to read because they're so high and it's so difficult to read what are they. And those who are not very familiar might not be interested and see this huge banner. So this is the way they communicate each other. It's how big is the communications done by the actor to the forum. And then the second one is, are they given an opportunity for them to ask and raise questions? And that's the second one. And the third one is about judging, whether they are given an opportunity to judge and to give consequence to the actor in a way of informal and formal way. So next one, please. So the next one we're talking about, the next slides, please. The next one, we're talking about the ice cube. And this is really, really powerful to determine where your actor and forums sit in this cube. So in this case, I could tell you that Desa Jenjing is in the form of C, and Desa Pule and Sambirajo can be in the form of D. The only reasons why I said like that, because of the limited amount of information distributed to the forum for Desa Jenjing, but for Desa Sambirajo and Desa Pule, they have a little bit more information towards the constituents. So in this case, we do have three different dimensions on communications, that is informations, and then descriptions, as well as on the consequences. You can see it, there are 8 quadrants. In this case, the best one is going to be on F, if you, the not big F1, so that's A, B, C, D, and then we do have G8, E, F, G, H, and the F is going to be the ideal one. Apparently, we are still in the C and the D level. Next one, please. So once we know about this, and then we can do and then talk about this. Or what do we do next apart from that? Okay, we talk about the findings. Next one, please. So before we go to the findings, I'll just tell you, just to tell you a little bit about the methodology. So what we do is we are using a case study with single case, but with multiple embedded unit analysis, because we do have multi-unit analysis as well as a multi-layers of unit analysis. We choose a Genjing, Sambirejo, and Hule, and these are located in three different districts. Very important one, we use content analysis, and we use thematic as well as constant comparative in comparing the themes and the contents that occurred in these two different regions. Before the COVID outbreak, we used to have the research instruments by visiting the sites. We call it the field trip study, and also we used observations, using participatory exhibition, but also at the same time use interviews and questionnaire. But because of the COVID outbreak, interview is the only way we collect data, and it's done through WhatsApp calling. So WhatsApp video or WhatsApp audio. The next one, please. The next one, please. The findings. Next slide. Yes, I'm not going to go through this one because this is a bit longer in explaining, but in the paper I'm going to tell you about the way the forum and the actor communicate each other through different channels in terms of getting the information first. So getting the information from the actor and then providing information to the forum, providing information back again to the actors. So these are the proposed channels that we would like to have, and we look at what the problems that might occur due to these communications. Okay, next slide. Okay, so first, with regard to the first research questions about the perceptions on village plan, I we came from one village to another village. Also, we did interviews. The last one I did interview with Desa Sambirejo a few days ago. We would like to ask about what are the perceptions of from them in supervising these village fund allocations as well as on the director's assistance. So the first one is talking about it's really hard to monitor these funds from the community perspective because of the rights and duties is really unclear. So though it comes from the Badan Permusyawaratan Desa or the village supervisory body, still there are some unclear rights and duties outlined there, and then specifically when the village head did not distribute this kind of information to the communities, uh, the understanding of the communities are still very low, and that needs to have really a huge opportunity for us to conduct capacity building to the communities, especially to the village fund consultative body. Having a role play for this community, it will help them to understand what do we mean by corruptions and what do we do if we find a case of corruptions. Very important though, this is quite typical in every locations of Indonesia, every village in Indonesia. It's that close relationship between villagers and village heads. In Indonesia, it works through Kepala RT, Ketua RT, and then Ketua RW, and then, it goes on and on about that. So that really depends on the relationship between these parties, actors, and forum. If you're close enough with them, then you will be asked, you will be invited to contribute. But if you're not close enough, you will be disregarded, especially when you're not really in their way. So this is something quite challenging. Research questions number 2, please. Next slide, please. So for the next slides, this community of participations, they would really like to give feedback. They would really like to participate. Apparently, that written communications from actor to forum is quite limited. I mentioned earlier about the availability of banner, the availability of billboards in front of the kantor desa, the village offices. But that is something that they don't want to have it. They want to have it really like an intense report, written realizations report, as well as the discussions between the two. So I found also there's a challenge there. It's budaya ego pakiru. That is it's hard for us to understand if you do have some violations, if you do have some cases, why don't you tell? Oh, it's because he's a brother of my best friends and things like that. And that is something quite challenging for us to solve as well. So that's the community participations was hindered by all these things that is listed here. Research questions number 3, please. Next slide. On the next slides, talking about the role of the role of the communities. I'm talking about the female one. I'm talking this is especially about the female one. Number one is they're not invited for one or another reasons. Why they're not invited? Because they're not close enough with Ketua RT, with Kepala Desa, or maybe it was threatened for them. So it's kind of threatened because women are normally more diligent and more in terms of criticizing the government. So number one is that from the perspective of the actor, and also number two from the perspective of the forum itself, there is a lack of motivation, lack of leadership, lack of responsibility, and that is something that needs to be um, improved in the future. How do we train them so that they have a confidence in terms of leadership, confidence in terms of motivation, confidence in terms of communications, interpersonal skills, confidence in terms of negotiations, and things like that. Next slide. This is important. Next slide, please. On looking at the applications of the accountability theory. I mentioned earlier that we fall in the quadrant of C and D. So that is minimum of information, a little bit more information, but still minimum discussions and minimum consequences, either through the formal and non-formal consequences. So no discussions, that is quite typical everywhere, and that is something that we need to improve a bit more. Poor governance as a result of that no discussions, as well as the consequences. Next one, please. Next one, next slide. So this is also the way that we want to, in terms of communications, this is what we propose, the channel for them to communicate. In terms of communications, we do have a very good suggestions. Apparently, this is called as the whistle-blowing system. That whistle-blowing system is quite challenging when your village head is someone that has something to do with this fund. So they want that with the cases, corruption cases, that whistleblowing system is something that is quite challenging. For those who are not having these cases, the corruption cases, whistleblowing is not a problem at all. The reasons why we do have a problem with whistleblowing system is because they try to block it. So therefore, this whistleblowing system is so powerful that it has to be imposed from a higher level, like the provincial government, for instance, or maybe from the district and the regency, not from the village head, uh, the one who imposed this system. And that is something that we could do as well, and also some improvement on that participations. Next slide, please. So these are the communications channel that we want to improve. And the next one, please. And that's something that we can read and discuss in the paper. So we do incur some implications and also some limitations. We do have some policy implications, some business as well implications. We do have also some contributions related to the research gaps that has been done previously in other countries like in Bangladesh, in India, in Pakistan, as well as other developing countries. But we do also have some suggestions for further research. And I would like to talk about the conclusions. That's on my last slides. The next slide, one. Next slide, please. So, um, that close relationship between the forum and the actors that needs to be solved ASAP, and that needs to be solved so that we can involve more citizens. There are citizens who would like to involve, but they're not invited to participate in this kind of debate or in this kind of discussions with the village head. So how do we do it? That when we do and select the member of the village consultative body openly, again not by selecting because of their friends, openly, this will help for everyone to have a involvement with regard to this monitoring of the funds. Lack of involvement from women especially because of the lack of knowledge of women and lack of motivations of women, lack of leadership of women, that is something that we need to be done through many types of capacity building, through role play that we could conduct, and also because of the sometimes in cases in women people, for instance, some women are the breadwinner, those who earn money for the family, apparently not the spouse. And that is something that we need to think about that. So how can we at the same time also give them a chance to work and to earn money, but also to participate. So maybe by giving a little bit of a salary or things like that to be involved in the consultative body. Just letting you know that I need to inform you before that women participation in consultative body is still below 2% in every villages in Indonesia. So this is something that we need to do, and that is a lot of homeworks that we can do in the future. So that's my slides are there, and for those who wants to see and to go of the study, you can read it in the paper that will be published in the journal. Thank you so much for attending my presentation.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Afia, for a very interesting talk. We apologize for the technical problem of noises before, but luckily it has been solved and we can hear Dr. Alfia's voice very clearly. As for your information, Dr. Alfia is now in Australia, so she's not in Indonesia. And she's a lecturer in financial accounting in the School of Commerce at the University of South Australia. Right, Dr. Alfia? And just now, Dr. Alfia highlighted that women are often involved in the village administration, and she also mentioned about the challenges involved related to the role of the DPD members and also female members. I'm sure many participants are engaged into the talk, and we already have the list of the questions. But before that, let's move to the second speaker. We have set the Q&A in the last session later on. Okay, then, ladies and gentlemen, let's move to the second speaker. We are delighted to have Sapantini Hayward, Doctor of Education. Dr. Sapantini is an educator, a researcher, and a language teaching specialist. She holds a doctorate degree from Tasmania University and a Master of Education degree from Deakin University, Australia. And she has been involved in international education, including co-founded the Sekolah Nusa Alam, maybe some of you know, an international standard school in Lombok. She worked with many teachers internationally, including those from Indonesia, from Australia, and also from Thailand. And recently, she has expanded her interest on tourism and also development. So her talk today will be about the case study in Babadan. So to Dr. Sapantini, the time is yours. Dr. Sopantini? Dr. Laras, are you in? Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah. Okay, are you ready, Dr. Sopantini?
Hello?
Yeah. Can you hear my voice?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, okay. I think, Mas Azhar, can you show the slides, please? Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon from Hobart, where I am based. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to report to you a small case study. This is a case study illustrating how a community in Java, it is a small community, coping with the pandemic. This study is essentially a story of when competing views collide, religion, science, life, and livelihood, all of which matter. Babadan has 99% Islamic population, and within the community, the teaching of Islam on how to face imminent disease is interpreted differently. It also reveals the struggle of the community on how to balance the need to stay safe by working and staying at home, and the need to make a living by having to go out and about. Slide number 2, please. That's me, skip, and now slide number 3. In the presentation, I will cover the topic, where is Babadan, what did they do, how did they do it, what challenges are they facing, what outcomes are they trying to achieve, what resources they have and where get them, and what lesson can be learned from this community. Next. Before we start, let's we watch these 3 short videos. However, before that, it is important to report that up to now, no one in the village is reported to have contracted the virus. Let's watch the video. Hello? Is the video on?
Yes. Indonesia. Yang mana sih, Pak? Iya. Ini sudah muncul nggak, Pak? Harusnya bisa. Bentar. Iya. Sebentar. Harusnya muncul. Harusnya muncul, Pak. Sebentar ya, Pak. Ya. Sebentar, Bu.
Okay.
Sebentar. Saya share screen dulu ya, Bu. Sebentar.
Warga Babadan, tolong cuci tangan sebelum masuk rumah. Caranya seperti ini.
Thank you. That was the first video. And I need to tell you that this video was a self-made. It's made by the community member who is in the committee. They called Satgas Melawan Corona. This particular video is not worthy of the fact that the producer, who is the member of the community, is an academic teaching at Gadjah Mada University. He has a view of Islamic teaching on how to face imminent disease, which is clearly one that favors science. He is clear to not be supportive of people to keep using the mosque for their normal communal prayer and other activities while there is a high risk of transmission. This view was shared by the majority in the community, but unfortunately not by the religious leader. The view of the latter can be clearly seen in the mosque circular letter. Now we're going to watch the second video. Thank you. Thank you. That video illustrates in the beginning there was some confusion. The committee members weren't sure about how best to fight the virus. The committee wanted to spend the limited funding that they raised themselves to purchase more disinfectant chambers. There was a tendency to believe in a tangible solution like the chambers, than in a less tangible solution like hand washing with soap. Until, as a member of the community, I sent them a translation work, a material from Johns Hopkins University, which explains about transmission through droplet and the need for proper hand washing. There was very little reliable information about COVID-19 in Bahasa Indonesia. It is hard to know what to believe in social media. This was in March 2020, which is only a few weeks ago. This is a critical issue in the study. The limited resources were eventually channeled to buy all things to have washing facilities installed in 90 households in the whole community. Next video, please. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This last video illustrates the success of the community effort to temporarily stop the market, usually held every 5 days on Kliwon. It's a Javanese day. Hundreds of traders normally display their goods in the main street of the village. This is an example of the challenge to balance the need to save lives versus the need to preserve livelihoods. Next, slide 8. It's a map of Indonesia. The next slide is a map of Bantul, slide number 9, where it is. And then the next slide, number 10, is where the village is located. Next slide. What did they do? The community engaged themselves with various activities in health, community education, changing practices in community hygiene, mask production and wearing, social distancing, stay-at-home campaign, and village border control. Next. Did they get the government funding? No, not at all. They conducted fundraising. It is from the member of the community for the use of the community. They also contributed in kind in the form of free labor and expertise. Next. How did they do it? The formation of the committee was a turning point. This committee has members, all of whom are committed to fight the virus and to protect the community members from being infected. They consisted of the youth, of whom all are keen and have special interest to also protect their own families. The deeply ingrained Javanese culture of working together for the common good, known as gotong royong, off-road service conflict around religion and science. Next. You will see here, masks are distributing. And the second photo shows the village spraying program, which is one of the hygiene programs they do. Next. Next. This slide shows material for health education and border control, as you can see before also in the video. Next. This slide, you cannot read, but it is about security roster. This is the in-kind form that the community contributed where they would guard for the village security. Next. What challenges are they facing? As mentioned in the beginning, the community faced various challenges. Social media and scarcity of quality information written in Indonesian language, weak governance at the village level, competing views of Islam in the village, and the struggle between the need to preserve livelihoods and save lives. Next. Skip, next. This slide shows preparation work for the chambers. It is worth noting that with further information, plans for acquiring more chambers were abandoned. The original chamber is still in use in the mosque. Next. In this slide, the mosque circular letter reads clearly where the views of the village religious leader is clear. Worshippers are not obliged to attend communal prayers, but those who wish to do so are welcome. Next. Next. Almost finished. Yeah. You can see this photo in the video where the border control was in place. As mentioned before, this slide is a photo before they enforced border control, in particular for stopping temporarily the flow of market traders. The last slide, next. As a closer, the community wants to ask two questions. That is, when will the vaccine be available? And then until then, how long can they cope with the limited capacity and resources? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Laras, for an informative case study in Babadan, which is representing the, I'm interested in the gotong royong for current situation that can be also implemented in other areas. I think it's really opening up our mind to strengthen our self-awareness as well as social responsibility to cope with this pandemic. And we have already several questions that have been submitted by the audience. For those of you just joining us, welcome. And we have now listened to speakers. The first one is Dr. Elvia talking about the economic point of view, especially in the women empowerment. And just now, we listened to Dr. Sopantini about the case study to cope with pandemic in Babadan. And next, we will listen about the modeling and empowerment of women and COVID-19 in Indonesia. And this topic is special because it will be delivered by 3 speakers. The first one is Najma, PhD. She is a lecturer in Sriwijaya University, Indonesia. And also she got her PhD in Auckland University of Technology in New Zealand. The second one is Associate Professor Sharon Davis from the Auckland University of Technology, New Zealand. And the third one is Ibu Yeni, Magister of Public Health from Sriwijaya University. And they will start their presentation by showing us an interailing video, just like Dr. Laras did. And yeah, Dr. Najma, Ibu Najma, are you ready? Okay.
Yes.
Okay then, the time is yours.
Okay, the first one will be presented by Sharon. Our topic is about modeling women's empowerment and COVID-19 in South Sumatra, Indonesia. And the first presenters will be Sharon, and it will be followed by me and then by Yeni. At the first case, we would like to show you a short video about how the importance of women, particularly mothers, to protect their family in our movement, and why we need to know the real data, that the data that have presented is still underestimated. So by seeing the modeling, we know the real data. Thank you. Please, the video.
You're gonna wanna be my best friend, baby. You're gonna wanna be my best friend. Baby, you're gonna wanna be my best friend. Best friend. You're gonna wanna be my best friend, baby. You're gonna wanna be my best friend. Best friend. You're gonna wanna be my best friend, baby. You're gonna wanna be my best friend. I say that I'm happy.
Sharon, please, you can start.
Okay, terima kasih. Selamat siang semua. Thank you so much for this opportunity to come and speak with you all today. And I would like to say a big shout out to Sopan, who I've known actually for quite a long time. My son went to Nusa Alam school for a while in Lombok, so it was lovely to reconnect here. So in our talk today, we're going to be looking at two different things that Indonesia can move towards in terms of coping with COVID-19. And I'm quite conscious that I am really speaking from a place of real privilege. Just about 30 minutes ago, New Zealand announced that we're moving to level 1, which means we're pretty much back to normal with only border restrictions in place, but we haven't had any new case for almost 3 weeks, and there's not a single case in the country. And so I recognize then that in many ways Indonesia has a far more difficult time and has not had the luxury that New Zealand has had, not least of which we have a very small population here compared to Indonesia's. And so what we'll be looking at today is two aspects of a research project. The first one is the importance of modeling. So one way that we can cope better with COVID-19 is by having real-time data and good ways of predictive modeling, so we can work out where clusters are, how to start eliminating that, doing things like contact tracing. So that will be one aspect of our talk. And the other one is about ways in which particularly women can be empowered to affect change and help communities cope with COVID-19. So I will hand over to the other two speakers, and I will come back at the end, if time permits, to sum up and give a few conclusions on our talk.
Thank you very much. We talk about, where is the next slide, please? our study setting in South Sumatra. So if we know that Jakarta is the capital city of Indonesia, so it will only takes 50 minutes by flight to Jakarta. And with the land transportation now, it can take 5-6 hours from Jakarta to South Sumatra. So the peak epicentrum now, the COVID-19 is in Java, particularly in Jakarta. And what we learned from our data, that next slide, please. Indonesia that has reported the second highest number of cases after Singapore. Remember that our population is almost to 270 million and Singapore is about 7 million, but they have detected a lot more cases than Indonesia. Unfortunately, the Indonesia ranks first of the highest mortality rate. It reads about 7% or out of 100 people infected COVID-19, 7 of them are likely to pass away due to this virus. Unfortunately, the number of the access for the test kit or the chance to access the COVID-19 test is still very low compared to other countries in our neighboring countries. And the report said that based on the modeling in Indonesia, the reported is only around 10 or 20% of the real cases that have spread in our community. Considering the disparities of the human resources, the health facilities in out of 34 provinces in Indonesia, it's necessary we see in every province how about the condition and how about the prediction of the data. Thank you. Next slide, please. And I just need to compare, for instance, we take 2 data. Jakarta is one of epicentrum of COVID-19 in Indonesia, and then our province, me and Yeni are from South Sumatra. So we compare that the population is not quite big difference. So around in South Sumatra, 8 million, and in DKI Jakarta is 10 million population. But if you see how many tests have been conducted in both provinces, in so much difference. So, and also the large social distancing, Jakarta have been started in the early of April, and in our province it's only started in 12th of May, and effectively it was conducted after Lebaran. So there are a lot of disparities about the availability of the test and also the implementation of PSBB or large social distancing in every province in Indonesia, including in South Sumatra and other provinces. The next slide, please. What our concern that why we need, like Sharon said, that why we need to empower women, that we know that family is at the core of the Asian life, including Indonesia. And secondly, why we need to know, is it the real numbers that have reported by the government or by the local government, or it's only pseudo numbers, so it's only what 5% or 10%. So we need to be aware of that. So we did a statistical and epidemiological approach based on the South Sumatra condition. Next slide, please. So the first method, I will explain about the first method. We conducted an approach of qualitative approach, and we believe that empowerment practice has a strong root in feminist research. So feminist participatory action research was chosen as a suitable research methodology to facilitate the emergence of women's voices and collective empowerment leading to social action. Figure 1 shows the cycle of our movement. The first step, that the notion of family is a part of daily life in Asian context, including in Indonesia. And the next step is we believe that women, whatever their education background, their social status, were the central of this study to construct the knowledge and critical understanding why family is vulnerable to COVID-19. And the next cycle, the third and the fourth cycle, that we believe that the collective awareness of the importance of protective family is particularly children from COVID-19 is a core of our movement. We engage some female volunteers in our social activity. We call it Pangling, Penyuluhan Keliling Anak, or mobile COVID-19 awareness that in a crowded suburban area in Palembang. Reflective analysis was used to understand how the women's empowering can be worked in the society of particularly in South Sumatra. Thank you. Next, please. We believe that we cannot work alone. Some people decided to stay at home, and some people still be part of the community, just do like before pandemic, play together, particularly the kids. If you see in kampung, in suburban areas, they still play kites, they still gather, and only limited of them use the mask. So this action is a critical awareness of the women surrounding me to enable social transformation in practice. What we can do, because we need to protect our family, particularly children. And some we work with other people who can donate, like for the provide the masks, soaps, and we use social media for our movement to engage other people who stay at home but they want to join with us. And for us, about 10 female volunteers who stay surrounding kampung to work, to go to the field to educate the kids. Next slide, please. And this is the importance of women in our movement. Initially, we feel hesitate to go to the field because nowadays we know that it's local transmission, and with limited access of COVID-19 in South Sumatra, we don't know who get infected or who don't get infected. So it's a bit worry at the first time, but we discussed with our social movement, we call it Kampung Pandai 13 Ulu, or English camps in Kampung 13 Ulu, what we can do. So one by one, women surrounding me thought that we can do it. We can go to the field. We know we need to, if our neighbors got infected COVID-19, so it means that our family also can get infected COVID-19. So we start from the critical awareness, because the culture of Indonesia nowadays is quite different. What we call that, kalau tidak ada transportasi, tidak gerak. So if there is no money, we cannot move. So we should break that mindset, because our founder fathers, Soekarno and Suharto, they taught us how gotong royong, like Ibu Suhartini shared to us, is the basic movement for our empowerment. So the female volunteers who involve these activities are ibu rumah tangga or housewives, and most of them are teachers or teachers in Islamic schools, in kindergarten, English teachers, and private teachers. So they're aware that they can move, they can go to the field. And we believe that it's just the beginning. Next slide, please. This is the process that we learned from the field, that WHO already predict that COVID-19 will be moved from a pandemic to endemic. But being Indonesian, we should pass the first wave of the COVID-19, like New Zealand, like Sharon said, that they already announced the winner at the first wave, but we haven't passed at that stage. So we should pass at that stage first. And what we observed, that Indonesian readiness, particularly in our province, is still far below that of several neighboring countries or provinces in Java. It is necessary to optimize women's empowerment, such as mothers and daughters, to breaking the chain of the virus. For instance, that we did that awareness, critical awareness, and participation of female volunteers. So we don't have money. We start with our own money, and other people see our activity because we use social media, Facebook, Instagram to upload our activities. And some of our friends, including the public health organization of Universitas Sriwijaya, come to us. What can we help? This is my son. Say hi. Hi. Okay. The lesson that we learned that from religious perspective, particularly in South Sumatra with over 95% Muslim, that we have the touch that we are taught that verily Allah, God, will not change the condition of a people unless there is a change of what is in themselves. So it can be one of the spirituality motivation to empower more people to get involved to reduce the spread of COVID-19 in the closest community. As far as we understand that some people surrounding us say only tawakal, so just pray, but we need more than that. We need to protect our families. We are fine, but how about if our parents or our kids get infected COVID and there is a limited sources in our country, our province? And why we need to know the real numbers of COVID-19 in each province, not only the prediction in Indonesia, and that will be explained by Yeni. Next, Yeni. In the method 2, Pak. Yeni, next. In the page 11 now.
Hello, Bu Yeni. Hello, Dr. Najma. I think Bu Yeni, probably there is a problem. Is it better for you to continue or share it probably?
Najma, did you want to talk through the quantitative modeling?
I think Najma is offline or frozen.
Sharon, would you please continue?
Yeah, sure. And I can see a great question here that perhaps I can go to that, as the epidemiological modeling is somewhat outside my expertise. But I could perhaps go to the question that's been asked, and we can see if someone comes back in to talk about the modeling for the epidemiology. Yeah, so I think what the modeling showed is that Indonesia has just not had the capacity both to do the tests for COVID-19 or the capacity to be modeling those statistics. And I think one of the findings was that any estimates of COVID-19 numbers will be much lower than the actual numbers. There are many people who do not have access to medical assistance, who do not have access to testing, and so they are not reflected in the models and the percentages that have been publicized. And of course, people are often worried about going to get testing because you're bringing yourself into an area that there might be other people who already have COVID-19. So a lot of people stay away from testing facilities. They don't have access to those facilities. And so whatever estimates we are seeing, modelling shows that these are likely to be much less than actual recorded, than the actual cases that are. And without accurate predictive modelling of the true number of cases, it's quite hard to assess the situation. And we've just seen in Brazil today that they have stopped releasing figures on how many cases have been reported in Brazil. So again, Brazil has also had difficulties both in terms of testing and then also in modelling those numbers, and now have become reluctant to share that data with the UN. So in a similar way, I think the reported statistics in Indonesia are much lower than actual numbers. I think Najma's just come back in. She might want to have some summary comments just on the modelling. As someone who understands both qualitative and quantitative data, she might have some insights on that.
Okay, thank you, Mom. The next slide, please. So we developed with Yede and Sharon, so, but how about if there is single interventions, no interventions, multiple interventions, and the final is multi-intervention with the vaccination, and it's still, we cannot perform about that. But based on the prediction of the results, that the implementation with single interventions, such as we only conducted education or only PSBB or only one approach, it only can reduce the cases about 500,000 cases. So fortunately, if we conducted a comprehensive approach like women's empowerment, a community empowerment, education from society, PSBB, and we perform in the early of pandemic, it can reduce for almost 500,000. Okay, 500,000 in the peak of pandemic in South Sumatra. Unfortunately, the peak can be not only in, we predict it will be in the end of June, but without the comprehensive intervention, it can be more than July. So it's quite challenging in our condition, and every province have their challenges. The next one, please. So how about the scenario? This is the model shows that the estimated number of cases in South Sumatra that need treatment in hospital without interventions. So in the scenario without interventions, for instance, the society just neglect whatever the government says, and they didn't educate themselves, and PSBB is only formality. We call that formalitas. So there is a only unlimited time the soldier or the police check the community, not the 24 hours. So the data shows that the number of cases who need hospitals and ICU can exceed the ventilators beds in South Sumatra. This model shows this. Yes. Yes. The model shows that at the end of June, the South Sumatra government needed almost 1 million beds in hospital, and 10% of them need ICU. Unfortunately, in South Sumatra, based on the Ministry of Health report, we only have about 10,000 beds, and we only have around 300 ICU. So other patients, where if we got infected, where we can treat it, where they can be treated. Okay, the next slide, please. So the scenario will be different if there is intervention. The scenario will differ if there is interventions. The the cases will be down dramatically, and the need of ICU will decrease dramatically. So we need work together or gotong royong. Okay, the next slide, please. What we can learn from the quantitative to qualitative. Sharon, please.
Okay, thank you, Najma, and well done managing not just one child, but there's actually another two running around. So you've done very well to manage all of that. I've shipped mine off to karate for the night, so have a little bit of peace and quiet. So just, I'm conscious of time, so I will just quickly wrap up and just noting that there's a long road ahead for Indonesia in terms of COVID-19 and lots of useful things that can be taken advantage of in terms of providing care and vigilance against Corona-19. And one of those, of course, is gotong royong and getting the community involved in doing those examples. And we saw them from the videos that have been played for our talk and also for Sopan's of ways that people are coming together and developing their own narratives and songs and stories to help protect against that. And I see a really interesting question here, but I think we have questions and comments at the end, so I will come back to that one later on, and we might wrap it up here to leave a bit more time for questions and answers at the end. So thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Associate Professor Sharin, Ibu Najma, and I think Bu Yeni faced a problem for the internet connection. So yeah, anyway, it's a very, very nice talk. And I'm sorry because the time limitations, so we need to quit for this. And let's move to the last but not least. We will move to the last topic about scholarship of community engagement, which will be delivered by Brahma Putra Mariadi, MD, MPH, PhD, SFH, the title is so long, yeah, Bapak. Okay, Dr. Brown has a medical degree from Indonesia and master and PhD in public health from the University of New South Wales, Australia. And today, Dr. Brown will deliver his talk about building the scholarship of community engagement. So Dr. Brown, are you ready?
Yep, thank you very much.
Okay, it's all yours.
Thank you, everybody. I'll try to wish through this in about 10-15 minutes. Hopefully, I can finish this. So a little break from Indonesia and COVID-19. Just a bit light-hearted picture there at the beginning. Building the scholarship of community engagement. It's a picture from Chinese mythology, martial arts stories that it's like growing wings on tigers. I'm going to explain to you what it means, why we can improve on our community engagement projects. So as you know, different universities have different levels of university community engagement. I still remember when I just started my career back about 25 years ago, community engagement was mainly part of the surface part of the university, the higher degree triangle. Learning and teaching is one, research is one, surface is community engagement. And I believe in Indonesia, most the accreditation and the academic promotion process still see community engagement as part of the surface only. Now, other universities may have incorporated community engagement in learning and teaching and also in research as well. So it's part of all three pillars of the university. Yet somehow it's not enough to just look into community engagement as, yeah, we're doing something with the community. I'm going to talk more about the first topic, which is limited scope and potential. Community engagement in higher degree in universities can be way much more than what it's often is right now. But there are other three problems why we need to be careful in running community engagement as we do. We kind of need to think and reflect about how we approach community engagement to avoid the next three pitfalls. One is to create an unequal relationship between universities and the community. Sort of like, you guys have problems out there, we have all the expertise, let us come to you and solve all your problems, which kind of like, you know, put the community right at the bottom of that power relationship. And we have all the solution. I mean, it's all under the very nice sort of semantics, or like as we're here to step down from our Eiffel Tower and everything like that. But at the end of the day, it's not an equal footing relationship. Number two is tokenistic, tick the box kind of thing. Okay, I want to apply for academic promotion, and oops, I need to do something with the community. Okay, let me do something with the community. I can tick that box. Accreditation purposes is exactly the same thing, which is sort of that opened up a slippery slope towards a utilitarian view, which is questionable ethically and morally. Who are we doing community engagement for? Who's benefiting for this? And at the end of the day, whose needs are fulfilled by all our community engagement activities? So the scholarship of community engagement is kind of a framework which could prevent us from falling into these traps. And as a 4-point say, it could really release the full scope and potential of the way we deal with the community. Now, so there are 3 building blocks in the scholarship of engagement. First is the community engagement itself. What is it that we do with the community? And then number 2 is, why are we engaging with the community? And one model of that is this thing called social accountability. And then the scholarship engagement is how we can approach doing this with the community. Okay. So what is a community engagement? Here I'm presenting the definition from the Carnegie Foundation. It's quite a long definition there, but these are the highlights, the keywords from this definition. So it's basically, it's a collaboration. It has to, we have to do it with the communities. It has to be mutually beneficial. And it also needs to be in the context of partnership and reciprocity. So it has to benefit both sides. And it's a partnership, as in it's an equal footing. And what is social accountability? Again, this is quite a lengthy definition. This definition I took from the Australia and New Zealand medical deans. So it refers to medical school, but the keywords here basically as tertiary education institutions, so universities, we need to direct our education, research, and service activities. So again, I would like to highlight they're not just our service activities, but also our education and research to address the priority and concerns which is to be identified jointly with the community. So it's not like we decide this is what the community needs because this is what we think that this is what the community needs. Social accountability requires a dialogue, an ongoing dialogue, to make sure that what we do and what we think and what we teach and what we research on are relevant. But that's not for us to decide, but has to be discussed with the community. And sometimes this part of the community role in this is quite limited. Now, so looking into the learning and teaching, research and service which is engaged with the community, it puts the university community relationship in a balance. And this is a kind of thing that we need to sort of reflect to ourselves when we do community engagement. How much of this is for us, the university, and how much of it is for the community? Right? I have read many papers, particularly from less developed countries, where it's kind of like a small project, mainly by students, doing something with one village, and that was the end of it. You can clearly see that that's the end of the project. It's kind of the end of the undergrad thesis, for example. It's the end of the student placement program, and so the students learned something, and they went home, got their grade, published a paper, yay, presented a conference, yay. What happened with that village after the university left it? That's the kind of, that's the part of the story that is very rarely reported. It's comparing community engagement projects in villages level in particular. There's not really that many stories about what happened after the university left, after the funding ran out. And this is the kind of question that we need to ask ourselves. Are we doing the right thing by the community in our community engagement? Where does the balance lie? So what is the community engagement scholarship then? it's not just publishing our work, because in most cases, publishing our work will tip the balance even greater to our end. I attended a conference back in 2015 in Canada, and it was about community engagement. One of the speakers asked everybody in the room, how many of you are actually community members? How is it that we do all our works with the community, but when it's time to claim the glory by presenting and publishing our work, it's all just us, the academics? Where are the community members in the glory of our publications, in our scholarship? Where do they sit? Or are they just receiving parties, passive receiving parties? Or even worse, we make them do the work with us, but we don't acknowledge them and we don't allow them to share the glory with us when it comes to publication and scholarship. So it's not just about publishing. We need to be aware of that. So what is scholarship? One of the models that is very commonly used is presented by Ernest Boyer back in 1990, where he coined that term, scholarship of discovery, integration, teaching, and application. And scholarship of engagement is part of scholarship, is another name for scholarship of application. That's the long definition of that, but I just want to highlight some keywords there. It's very pragmatic. It's basically what we do as academic with the community, but there's a very strong pragmatic slant to our work. It needs to be practical. It needs to improve. It needs to create a change, a difference in the community. Okay, so doing a before and after testing after one shot intervention may not have a long-term benefit that could improve the society. It can improve the students' knowledge who are being placed and who are running that research project, not necessarily solving the problems in the community. I have seen lots of examples, for example, when reproductive health is concerned. So teaching them safe sex, for example, and then doing before and after knowledge test, right before and right after the training, that doesn't change the fact that young girls are still entering into marriage at the age of 12 or 13, right? One shot like that is successful. It's good for the students and the academics who's doing that pilot project, but it doesn't really change anything in the community. And that doesn't really fit well with this model of scholarship of engagement. So what's the model then? The model is we need to approach community engagement and learning, teaching, research, and service with a theory, with a framework, and then which will inform the practice, what we do. And then we need to generate evidence from that. And then we need to disseminate, not just to publish it to get our names on PubMed or Scopus, but more importantly, disseminate to the community and then continue the dialogue, continue the consultation. What do you think about this? Give them the equal power as we do and let them sit on the driver's seat and tell us what to do next, okay? And then everything needs to be framed in an institutional supportive environment. Now, I'd like to share what we do at the Western Sydney University, the School of Medicine. So our model, we co-design, co-deliver, co-assess, and co-evaluate all our community engagement model with the community partners. We try to create an equal footing and mutually beneficial partnership. We ensure evidence-based approach from the literature, or we build evidence from our own experiences. And we ensure we do robust methodology, monitoring, evaluation, sustainable and evolving community partnership from student placement, going into research, going into service, and feeding back to student placement again. And then share the academic acknowledgement, share the glory with the community partners. So this is what we do. I don't have enough time to go through everything, but just to let you know some parts. For the teaching and learning, for example, we're using the community engaged learning framework and partnership pedagogy. We're currently running 2 research projects. This is straddling between learning and teaching and research about constructive alignment and learning and teaching innovations we do with the community members, community partners. Our learning and teaching model and our service model are both based on experiential learning and interprofessional learning theories. And when in our research, we translate it into service, and our service, we do research on our service, and our service is based on our research finding through the knowledge translation framework with KT1 to KT6. And our policy framework, we're committed to social accountability. We put our community partners in our governance and advisory committees, mutual benefits, and institutional vision, strategic, and planning. Now, what do they look like in reality? This is the KT1 to KT6 model. I'll leave that for you to have a look later. I'm happy to share the slides with you all. This is a piece of work that I was part of. This is an international collaboration to design what is community engaged medical education. And a translation of that, a clear translation of that is this thing that we have here. That when we a couple of years ago we did community roadshow, we consulted with the community when we were about to change our curriculum. We basically asked the community, what is it that you want us to teach our students? And as you can see from the report here, that these community roadshows were hosted by our community partners. They invited their members and clients and service users to give input to us, the School of Medicine, as to what should be in our curriculum. And these are the top 10 teaching topics that our community partners, our community consultation informed us. So now we're building our curriculum based on these 10 topics as the main priorities. We publish quite a lot of our works in conferences and in some journal articles as well. But this is one photo from one of our conference presentations. That's me sitting there in the middle with my deputy. So the two of us are academics, and we share the glory with two of our community partners. We share it together to share how we have been guiding our students through community immersion. And this paper has just been published recently. And as you can see, there are 14 authors there. And out of the 14 authors, 4 of them are community partners. Now, they never published anything before. When I offered them the opportunity to write our stories together, they sort of say, oh, well, but you have to teach us how to do that. And I said, sure, that's a deal. We will write it together and we will share our stories together. And that was just been published earlier this year. And the last part of my title is a senior fellow of the Higher Education Academy. And the reason why I was able to get this fellowship was because I presented my scholarship of engagement work in my application, and it was deemed meeting the UK Higher Education Academy 15 points to get the senior fellowship. So what are the lessons learned? It takes a lot of work. It would have been much easier if I just stick to my classical work of just teaching, research, and do community service every once in a while. Establishing and building the scholarship of community engagement takes a lot of time and a lot of work. But we are able to do that. My team, my school has been able to do that because we have very strong support from communities, patients, carers, clinicians, even hospital clinicians. Then we have seen clear benefits from the university and to the community. And we learned that without institutional commitment and support, it's impossible to do this kind of work. The challenges is ensuring engagement space and resources. Community engagement is not sexy. Okay, international engagement is sexy. COVID-19 is sexy. Domestic violence is sexy. Not good, but sexy. As in, there are lots of funding there. You look for grants and funding for community engagement scholarship, none. So it's difficult. It's not an easy. It's a dry patch of land. How to engage clinically and science-oriented students and colleagues, particularly in the School of Medicine. And what we learn about community engagement is slowly unfolding. So it took years to realize what's happening. So it's not a low-hanging fruit. It's actually it takes a lot of work to get where we want. And then we also need to support our community partners so that they can relate to us in this equal footing thing. Because as I mentioned in my experience in publishing with them, for example, they say, oh, what can we do? We are nobody. We're not academics. We cannot possibly do this. Well, guess what? They could. That paper was written in 20 days during summer and Christmas break. So that's how amazing our partnership could be if we implemented the scholarship of engagement. So, in conclusion, scholarship of engagement provides an academic framework around community engagement, and it converts tokenistic and opportunistic events or activities to meaningful, effective, sustainable, and mutually beneficial partnership. And this is what I meant by giving scholarship wings to community engagement tiger. So I put there a few reflective questions which you may want to ask yourself in your community engagement activities. On a scale of 0 to 10, how scholarly would you rate your own work, and how would you improve your community engagement scholarship? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brown, for very, very interesting presentation. I do agree that the most important thing is not getting our name published in Scopus or in PubMed, but for continuing the research and also being impactful for the community. So Dr. Brown also concluded by giving the scholarship wings to community engagement tiger. That's very interesting. Okay, so very well, ladies and gentlemen, now we come to the question and answer session. We have already list 3 questions for each speaker. And these questions we got from the Google form that we already shared yesterday via email, and also from the chat room, both in Zoom and also live streaming in YouTube. Okay, Mas Azhar, is it ready? Okay, so first is the question for Dr. Elvia Shauki. Ibu Elvia.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm astonished to get answers from everywhere. I mean, first it's from Palembang, and then second from Papua, third is from India. I'm not sure. Third must be from India. And I thank you so much. And I think we missed one question, which is going to be uploaded in a minute. But answering questions number 1 about the model on the community engagements in the village, and with the culture of Ewo Pakewo. I'm not sure that everyone is familiar with this Ewo Pakewo. I myself am Javanese, so I'm from Jogja. So Ewo Pakewo means that that you're not supposed to do that because of the you're not talking to the your superior body, for instance, or either to male, or either to your teacher, either to a senior one rather than your positions. In my opinion, and in our research, which I'm going to add to this point, Nadia, apparently this budaya Ewo Pakewo is going to be solved when we do have open recruitment. So recruitment for the member of the village consultative body. So if you do have a close relationship, that close relationship will generate Ewo Pakewo. But if you select people joining the team of the consultative body as based on the independent and open recruitment, I mean, you don't have any pressure. You don't have any burden to say yes, though it is wrong. So I think that's one of the solutions. And also educating women to be independent, to be respecting others in a professional way. I think that's a good way for us to think about that Ewo Pakewo. I mean, in Australia, we don't have Ewo Pakewo. Everyone can talk freely, can talk with high freedom, whatever they think about like not socially justice, for instance. So that's number 1. Number 2, in the Indonesian culture and Eastern culture, for instance, Kepala Suku, or the leader, is the representative of the local leaders. There is no way for us to report that. Okay, so this is why in one of the aspects of our finding is talking about the whistleblowing system. So if you know, in Indonesia, we have started with lapor, lapor.co.id. That means you can report anything, and that includes as well on reporting a case in fraud in Dana Desa and as well as PLDDD. But what we aim for is specially design a whistleblowing system anonymously or with leaving track names, just the names, reporting any frauds related to PLTTD as well as on the village fund allocations. The third one, and I think it's similar to the questions on number 5 about the role of women. The role of women, it has been proven by a lot of studies that women are more keen in terms of supervising any budget. So women are more keen, women are more resilient, women are more persistent, women are more accurate, and women are more capable in supervising budget, especially related to the village fund budget. Um, it is so unfortunate, though, in Indonesia that women are also considered to be the breadwinners. They have to earn money for the family. So this is the problem that at the same time they have to work to earn money. Well, and then at the same time they're also asked to contribute their times to help the community. And that is something that we need to think about. How about if they have to sacrifice their times, taking care of the multitask purposes, taking care of the children, taking care of the families and breadwinners, and at the same time, community engagements. Questions number 4, that local bodies should motivate women for involvement on village activities and administrations. That is questions from Aziz Ranjanin from India. I think that is quite spot on. The role of the the consultative body is needs to be empowered. That women empowerment needs to come from that part as well, and also from the village head. It's very important. And I think by preparing a regulations that women's needs to be increased. Just for your informations, only one is required to represent women in the village consultative body. I think just one member is not correct. It should go more than one, at least 50%. Thank you for all of the great questions. Thank you, Ibu Astari.
Thank you, Dr. Alfia. Next, we move to the second speaker, Mas Azhar. Next slide, please. Okay, so here are the questions for Dr. Brown. Dr. Brown, please.
Yep, thank you. So the first question, this is for the non-Indonesian participants. The challenges in Indonesia is that the evidence-based voices from scientists are not listened to, are not heeded by the government. Look, I'm not going to go into this political minefield, but just going back to the topic of my presentation, which is the scholarship of engagement. To be honest, there are lots and lots of things that we can do with the community, with our local community, regardless of what the bigger wheel of the system or the political system goes. So there are a number of things that quite a lot of things. I mean, a lot of my works to improve the quality of sexuality education in schools, for example. I've been working on that for 23 years without involving political decisions or anything at a higher level. So long as we have this ongoing and sustainable partnership with the community, then there's lots and lots of things that we can do. So the government politicians may or may not be listening to evidence from the scientists. That's another part of the story, but it should not stop us from doing the right thing by the community. And we can just focus on that, and then we can start making changes. And hopefully that will create evidence which we can just report back to the government, say, hey, I've done this pilot over this long period of time, and I've proven that this is working. Why don't you adopt this? The second question is, I'm not very clear about this this question, but it says about why is it that the scientists and universities always include the political aspect in their research? Again, my background is in public health, which is pretty political in a sense, right? It's not about putting in political aspects just for the sake of making our study political or to make it, like a worthwhile. As I mentioned, there's lots of little things, but evidence-based, but little things, so you can make a big leverage to improving the community. So the point is, it's not about what we think is important. It's not about what would be suitable for the politics at play. Okay, it's all about what the community needs and what the community could work together with us. And it's our job to make sure that we'll take those points and bring it to the best level it can be. That's what community engagement scholarship is all about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for a very clear answer. And then next, for Dr. Sapantini. Okay, Dr. Sapantini, Ibu Laras. I guess Ibu Laras is not here. Probably just next for Ibu Najma and Sharon.
Sharon, you can start first.
The next slide. Okay, so.
Sharon, start first.
Yeah, maybe I could take the first question, which I think is just about communication and clear messaging. And I think this is a really, really important thing. We've seen out of the UK, for instance, Boris Johnson being very unclear in his messaging, saying things like stay home unless you need to go to work. And so people aren't really clear what to do. And I think this is one lesson where the UK and Indonesia and others can look at what happened in New Zealand and adopt some of those strategies. There was very clear messaging about when to stay home, when you could go out, who you could meet. So I think it needs strong leadership. And it needs strong leadership that isn't politicized. So it can't be, as often happens in Indonesia, that politicians are trying to get a particular point across. People in leadership roles need to step back from that and just think very systematically about what is best for the country, not what is best for their political campaign, and to decide on clear messaging that is reinforced at every level, from the president right down to governors, right down to Bupati. So I think just some clear messaging would really help in terms of that first question.
Okay, for the next question, Yeni will answer about statistic number 3. Yeni, please.
Okay, I will try to answer the question number 3. Until now, the data is still a problem in Indonesia related to COVID-19, especially in South Sumatra. This makes it difficult to ascertain the estimation of the case that occurred today. But with modeling, at least it could be an alarm for the worst possibility could have occurred related to this outbreak in Indonesia, especially in South Sumatra. So that it become an input for the government to immediately provide a response to the potential surge in cases that might occur in the future. So we will be able to ascertain whether the modeling is carried out in accordance with the current condition if the outbreak has ended. So there is no modeling that is 100% correct, but it's again, the purpose of the modeling is a tool in helping to take the policy of prevention of COVID-19, especially in South Sumatra.
Okay, thank you very much. For the second question, it's interesting because I'm conducting my PhD research with HIV positive women, and we approach with feminist approach that we believe that women, if you give a space, they are very powerful to make a change. So within Indonesian society, like the question that how about nowadays, women have a lot of roles at home, at working place, etc. But we believe that although women are working, if they stay with their parents or someone take care of their kids, they should transfer the knowledge that they have to empower other people that close to them to protect their children. And secondly, the stigma of women in Indonesia, they are only housewife. they just only take care of the family. I think it's the power of us, because if being a housewife in Indonesia, how the main role is to protect the family. So in our research saw that by critical awareness is necessary. You know that the first step that we conduct our research is building trust. We cannot ask female volunteers directly come to us. No, I need come to their house and discuss with them. So it's a process of building trust with women if you want to work with community, because in our culture, particularly transportation, without transportation we cannot move. We should change that mind. I think that is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bu Najma, Bu Yeni, and also Sharon for the answer. And I think we have one more set of questions for Dr. Sopantini. Ibu Laras, are you in? Hello, Ibu Laras.
Hello?
Yeah, okay. Okay, Bu Laras, so there are 3 questions for you. Can you see from the slides? Yeah, okay.
All right. Yes, yes. Okay. I would like to, to answer the third question first. The question is, what is the effective method to convince religious leaders and local leaders to go together hand in hand with the government in coping with this pandemic? Right, this is a very good question. The answer, in my view, is that there has to be good coordination among different government sectors, good coordination between the government and the religious leaders in the village and the local leaders in the village as well. Other than good coordination, there's got to be a consistency in the message. So different people have to not say different things. They have to be consistent in passing the message. And then they also have to be open to input. Honesty is important, and collaboration is also important. That's number 3. Number 2 is how it is about engaging of young people, educated people. Sure, this engagement of the youth is very, very important. However, it's also need to be coupled with good leadership from the village and also by the government as well. Number 1, I think I'm not very clear, but this is about multicultural member in the village, where my study probably the village is more homogeneous, and yes, it is not easy to deal with different competing member in the community, but again, leadership, good coordination, consistency, openness, honesty, all of those are easy to say, but difficult to be put in practice. But they've got to be held as a principle. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Laras. And it looks like we have covered all of the questions. So, ladies and gentlemen, finally we come to the end of this webinar, also from our own place, but let's give a big round of applause for all the speakers. Yeah, virtually. Okay, thank you very much for all the speakers. Thank you for sharing your insight and also your expertise. And we would also like to say thanks to everyone who joined us for today's webinar. We are sorry for the technical problems previously. and it takes a bit later from the schedule, but I think it's fine, and hopefully this webinar will be very much fruitful for all of us. And just a quick reminder for all the participants, please fill in the confirm your presence by filling the Google form. The link has been shared via email yesterday. And also just short information about our second webinar. It will be held on the 29th of September. So make sure you will be there and join us again. Okay, so probably that's all for today. For the speakers, do you have something to say before we wrap up? Okay. Okay, so thank you so much for everyone. See you in the second webinar in the end of September. So have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you. Bye-bye. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Bu Elvia, Shalin, Bu Najma, Bu Yeni. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.